Forget Burt Reynolds in his cowboy hat. And forget the Hoff with his big hair and shoulder pads. The most important Pontiac Firebird Trans-Am is the 1969 model, the original, the granddaddy of them all. In the late 1960s, the Sports Car Club of America Trans-Am Sedan Championship was big business, and Detroit was wading in with huge manufacturer support. And Pontiac wanted to get in on the action. So it teamed up with the newly established TG Racing, headed by former Shelby American driver Jerry Titus and Canadian businessman Terry Godsall. Together, they created a special homologation version of the Pontiac Firebird. And Pontiac showed its intent by doing a deal with the SCCA for the use of the name Trans-Am. For every Pontiac Firebird Trans-Am built, Pontiac paid the SCCA $5. It was a good deal for everyone involved. Meanwhile, TG Racing got to work designing and developing its Trans-Am races for the 1969 season, and these were beautifully crafted cars. Ace engine builder Al Bartz was designing and developing some very special 303 cubic inch Pontiac engines, fitted with tunnel port cylinder heads. But with time running short, the team ultimately went to the SCCA and asked permission to run Chevy mills instead. The SCCA agreed, but weirdly, they made the team run 1968 front sheet metal. The TG Racing was a legit factory race team, and Pontiac were paying them money, but they were getting a lot less money than the other factory teams, and so they bumped up their income by building extra cars. It's believed that TG Racing built about 6 or 7 Pontiac Firebird Trans-Am race cars for the 1969 season. Some of these it kept itself and ran them as the factory cars, and the rest were sold off to independents. TG Racing never actually managed to win a race in 1969. But Jerry Titus managed to score a second place and finished third on 4 occasions. And then TG Racing set about designing and developing its new second generation Pontiac Firebird Trans-Am for the 70 season, and all the old 69 model cars were sold off. In late 1971, Ron Grable took a former TG Racing 1969 Trans-Am down to New Zealand to race. And when Grable returned home to the US, the Trans-Am stayed in New Zealand and was acquired by 1970 New Zealand saloon car champion Rod Coppins. Coppins raced the car in New Zealand and Australia and went on to win the 1973 New Zealand Saloon Car Championship. It was then sold to Robin Tanner and later became a street car. In the 1980s, the Trans-Am was bought by my good buddy Bruce Thompson. He fitted it with a 396 big block turbo 400 tranny, and he drove it on the street. And then ultimately he committed to a full-on, totally accurate 100-point restoration back to the guise in which it won the 1973 New Zealand Saloon Car Championship. And of all the Pontiac Trans-Am race cars built by TG Racing in 1969, this is the only known survivor. First thing you notice with this car is that it has the correct 1969 Trans-Am nose. The brilliant Canadian racer Craig Fisher drove a 69 model TG Firebird in the early rounds of the 1970 Trans-Am, and it had the correct nose, but the pre-1970 history of that car is unclear. Likewise, the pre-New Zealand history of this car is also unclear. The Trans-Am arrived in New Zealand with no motor. It was fitted with a small block Chevy for Grable to race, and for its entire New Zealand racing history, it was Chevy powered. Current owner Bruce Thompson has built a replica Traco Chevy with a Mackay magnesium intake manifold and 4 48 IDA Webers. The Trans is a Muncie M21 and the rear end is the original TG Racing built unit comprising sections of a 10-bolt Firebird mated with a Bonneville centre section. TG Racing built probably the best looking roll cages of all the Trans-Am teams in 1969, and they were built from chromoly. This car still has the original cage which stayed in place even when it was driven on the street. The dash fascia in this car is all correct, and so is the Grant steering wheel. If you look down here, you can see the original Swiss cheese door hinges. These cars had acid dipped bodies and they were built both light and strong. TG Racing extended the roll cage to meet the subframe for added strength. This car is just an amazing time warp. No doubt about it, this is a really special car, being the only known surviving example from Pontiac's 1969 factory Trans-Am race program. And this right here is a really special moment because at the Taupo Historic Grand Prix in early 2024, this historic Trans-Am was driven on a racetrack for the first time since about 1976. Anyway folks, I hope you enjoyed this little vid. If you did, please hit the like button, and while you're there, why not subscribe? Thanks so much for watching, we'll catch you next time. Cheers!